Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday night prayer meeting. Where'd that come from? Oh, we're going to stand and sing our first hymn, 626. I love to tell the story, first and last verse. We have words up here? To tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and his glory, of Jesus and his love. I love to tell the story because I know 'tis true. It satisfies my longings as nothing else can do. I love to tell the story. 'Twill be my theme in glory to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. I love to tell a story for those who know it best. Flames hungering and thirsting to hear it like the rest. And when in scenes of glory I sing the new song, 'twill be the old story that I have loved so long. I love to tell the story. 'Twill be my theme in glory to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. Thank you. Good singing. You may be seated. Our next hymn, Herb, you can't sit down. You have to come up. He already knows. We already talked about it. It's hymn 628, He Touched Me. We all know the song. So. Shackled by a heavy burden, neath the load of guilt and shame, then the hand of Jesus touched me, and now I am no longer the same. He touched me, oh, he touched me, and oh, the joy that floods my soul. Something happened, and now I know he touched me and made me whole. Since I met this blessed Savior, since he cleansed and made me whole, I will never cease to praise him. I'll shout it while eternity holds. He touched me, oh,
floods my soul. Something happened, and now I know He touched me and made me whole.
Thank you. Good singing.
All right, thank you all. I want to have you look at your bulletin just for a second and have a few announcements. There's a few more announcements, but I'll just do the ones that are coming up real quickly. February the 18th is our church-wide picnic. That's right under the order of service there inside the front flap of the bulletin. You look under the prayer needs, and the first thing is Saturday, February 18th is our church-wide picnic. And so if you have a grill and would like to help grill some hamburgers and hot dogs, call the church office so that we know, who's got those and make sure that we've got enough. If you have yard games like horseshoes or cornhole or, whatever, you still need to call the church office. We're not wanting to micromanage this, but we do have limited space, and we don't want a lot of people showing up with games and then people getting agitated because some people can't put their games out because we have limited space. And so call the church office if you have that. And then, of course, we're just encouraging people to bring a side, whether it's something that goes with hamburgers and hot dogs, baked beans, whatever, or if it's a dessert. And we're going to have even a little bit more to say about it on Sunday, this coming Sunday. But this is Saturday, February the 18th, so it's a week and a half away. Also, the baby bottle campaign, the last bottle was taken today. Those bottles have been being returned for a few weeks now. So they need to be back by February the 19th, the day after our picnic. And then Iron Disciples is tomorrow night. There is a ladies' event on the 12th, Sunday, this coming Sunday, but that's going to be Sunday afternoon, so I'm assuming Joey is going to mention that during the announcements. Okay, one other thing. Go on and turn in your copy of God's Word to Exodus 34, but I do want to let y'all know of something that I chatted with the deacons about. I know that the deacons here are not a voting body necessarily. I don't have to go to them to get a vote on, something that I believe the Lord is leading us to do as a church, but I greatly respect their wisdom. These guys, after all, had your hands or somebody's hands put on them to ordain them, approval. And so I would be a fool not to run things by them and listen to their input. And a lot of times I've, given them ideas. In the meeting, it doesn't sound like I'm getting, a consensus, and so I shoot it down because I respect these guys. Well, I ran an idea by them that I've actually been thinking about for quite some time, and this past Sunday, and they were very favorable to it, and it's this. We had a lady who has been attending. The name is, you may know who I'm talking about after I mention just a few things, but the name is not important, but the situation is. A lady that has been attending, and she's a part of a ministry, not a ministry that we're part of, but a part of a ministry, well, not a part that's here, but a part of a ministry, and she's from a church up north. I think it's in Pennsylvania or something like that. And because of her involvement in that ministry, she has to stay connected. She has to stay a member of that church, right? Because they're the sending church. And yet, she's down here for like 6 months out of the year, something like that. And so she feels like she's peering in the windows at us as a family. Whenever I was the pastor at First Baptist Brooksfield, they already had something like this. They said if you're out of state and you're a member in good standing at the place that you are at the church of like faith and order that you are at, if you are out of state, then when you are down here for months at a time, you can be a member here as well. You can vote. Of course, you can't be on committees and things like that because that requires a year to be here. We need people faithful for that. But it's a way that people can be a member in good standing there, but a member also in good standing here whenever they are here. People out of state, but spending a significant amount of the year here. It's not only her, but also we've got a lot of snowbirds A lot of snowbirds. I'm telling you, the deacons here have a heart to serve. How many of you remember, was it 2 months ago, month and a half ago, when all of the deacons stood up there and I said, hey, I don't think I called them a snowbird, but I said, if you have come down here and you call this place your home for quite a few months out of the year, but you're not a member, these deacons want to serve you. And so I said, at the end of the service, if you want, you can come up and snag one of the deacons and say, hey, I'm telling you, we gave it a try, but I knew they were not going to do it. You know why? Because I'm convinced, as I've observed, especially the older generation, they are a very loyal generation. And they generally don't want to take unless they're giving, right? I mean, I remember we had the meal, I think it was, I forget what meal it was, but it was over at the Bronson Center. And there were some of the older folks that even though it was a free meal, I think it was Thanksgiving, even though it was a free meal, some of them came back with money and they wanted to put it in the prayer bucket. We said, no, you don't have to. They wanted to. And so I sensed that those that are snowbirds didn't want to snag a deacon because after all, they would be, in their eyes, getting a service without being a part of this church. And so why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we say that when you are there, you could be a member of your church, but if you are out of state and if you are here for a significant amount of time during the year, then yes, you can join the church on the same terms that anybody else would. It would be by letter. You know, we would send a letter to the church there and say, hey, they have come with a desire to join the membership of this church while they are here, but they ask that they remain on board there. And some may say, really? What does the Bible say about this? I would challenge you to find any place in Scripture that talks about transfer of letter or anything. Bible is silent on it. It doesn't say anything. It's all stuff that we've gotten used to. And even with our bylaws say nothing about this as well. It certainly wouldn't forbid it. One of the things that is in our bylaws, though, is it says the closest thing is if someone hasn't been here in a year, then we reserve the right to move them from active to inactive. Well, snowbirds, they're going to be here every 6 months, you know? And so that doesn't even apply. So anyway, I just want you to know that this is, of course, within Scripture. It's within the parameters of our bylaws. I believe this is the right thing to do. It would allow those that are, again, they feel like they're looking in the window at us as a family, they could actually be a part of this family. And it fits within, our bylaws as well. So anyway, any questions on that? I don't want to bring up a big Q&A, but anybody have anything on that? All right. I want you to look at Exodus 34. Exodus 34 is an incredible passage. I love Exodus 33, particularly verse 18, where Moses demonstrated his hunger to taste of the Lord, to experience the Lord. Please show me your glory. Well, in chapter 34, God actually did. Yeah, I've gone through chapter 33 a time or two with you before, and I've referenced chapter 33, verse 18 quite a bit. But as we get our hearts ready for prayer, let's look at Exodus 34. The Lord said to Moses, so Moses has just said, please, Lord, let me experience you. And the Lord said, okay, this is how it's going to happen. And then chapter 34, the Lord said to Moses, cut 2 stone tablets like the first ones. Okay, so what happened to the first ones? Yeah, why? He was angry. He was angry. God was angry. There's nothing wrong with being righteously angry. He was angry. He threw the tablets down as a gesture, as an expression of his anger. And God said, okay, I know you're angry. I'm angry too. That seemed appropriate, but you know what? I'm going to make you cut them out this time. Cut 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets which you broke. Be prepared by morning. Come up Mount Sinai in the morning and stand before me on the mountaintop. No one may go up with you. In fact, no one should be seen anywhere on the mountain. Even the flocks and herds are not to graze in front of that mountain. So what do you hear so far? What's God saying? In between the word, what's God getting at? What do you sense? Yeah. It's a very private thing. It's a very private thing. There is a place and a necessary place for us to gather together as a family of friends. The Greek word is ekklesia, the called out ones. We say the word church. That's ekklesia translated into English is church. And there's got to be that. We've got to encourage each other. We got to sing together and pray together. And, you know, when we're feeling up, maybe the person next to us is feeling down. And so the fact that we're enjoying worship may encourage them, you know. Or maybe somebody's in sin and they happen to show up and we lovingly confront them and say, you know, I heard this or I saw this, and is this true? And if it is, I'm praying for you. I'm praying that God would give you victory. It sounds harsh, but if we love somebody, we want to help them to flourish. So there's that need for community. And in fact, the command for community, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together, right? But a lot of people think in the New Testament that that's it. That's God's time on Sunday morning, but the rest of the week is mine, right? The fact is those people who genuinely enjoy the Lord are those that realize that God is to be enjoyed in the church, in the group, but God is to be enjoyed individually. Just me and him. So that's what's going on. Verse 4. Moses cut 2 stone tablets like the first one. And I'm telling you, I bet that as he cut these stone tablets, he was kind of thinking about cutting the tablets, but I think he was wondering, what's it going to be like tomorrow? You know? God has invited me up onto the mountain. I get to go see him tomorrow. What's it going to be like? Moses cut 2. And again, you come into my presence, you're not going to feel anything. Maybe I come into your presence, I may not feel anything. Now, if Kim was to come in here and I'm telling you, I would feel something there, right? I love that woman. I love her to death. And so there's a connection. And so I would feel something that maybe we wouldn't feel with each other. I'm telling you that being in the presence of God is not just being in the presence of God. It is, I believe, an experience that overwhelms our senses. It's God that's going to make heaven heaven. If you've ever bought a new vehicle or bought a new house or bought a new computer or bought a new TV or new whatever, you were so excited about that thing and it was just so wonderful. And then after a while, you notice somebody's got one better than you, and all of a sudden this isn't giving you those good vibes like you had before, right? And it probably didn't take that long. Maybe it took a few weeks, maybe a few days. And all of a sudden, you don't get those good feelings anymore. We're never going to get tired of God. Millions of years, billions, trillions of years, never get tired of God. His presence is like nothing else. Moses wasn't just saying, hey, I'd like to be close to you. He was saying, I want to experience what it's like to be in your presence. It's more than just a light. It is a presence. And if you are someone that has enjoyed times in your life, maybe prayerfully you're enjoying it now, but maybe you have had times in your life that you have sensed, this is what it means to be a follower of God, because your heart is so filled up with love for him and joy in him, and it's like that dead religion that's oftentimes preached or lived out by others. It's so distasteful because you're enjoying your God. That is what was always intended, and in fact, that's what's going to make heaven heaven, is we're going to be able to experience him. Moses cutting the stones, thinking, what's it going to be like tomorrow? He got up early in the morning. Oh, I bet he did. I bet he didn't sleep in. He may not have even slept much that night. He got up early in the morning, and taking the 2 stone tablets in his hand, he climbed Mount Sinai just as the Lord had commanded him. Okay, so about how old is Moses now? About 80. Yep. 40 years in Egypt, 40 years on the desert, and there in the land of Moriah, tending his father-in-law's sheep, and then 40 years wilderness wandering as he was leading the Israelites through. He's at the beginning of this. They're only a few months into the 40 years, and so this is an 80-year-old guy carrying these stone tablets up the mountain just wondering, what's it going to be like? He got up early in the morning, taking the 2 stone tablets in his hand, and he climbed Mount Sinai, just as the Lord had commanded him. Here it is. The Lord came down in a cloud. Now, we hear cloud, we think, ho-hum. I'm telling you, I don't think that this was just a cloud. I think this was the glory cloud. The word is not given in the Hebrew Old Testament, but it's a word that many Christians and Jews are well aware of, and it's the word Shekinah. You've heard that word, the Shekinah glory of God? It's like the glory cloud. It's not a cloud like this. It's just something beautiful and radiant. The Lord came down in a cloud, like Jesus went up in a cloud. I don't think that was just a regular cloud. He stood with him there and proclaimed his name, the Lord. Okay? So again, I mean, boy, we could camp on this for a month of Sundays and still only touch it. But I don't think Moses is here and God is right next to him saying, the Lord, the Lord, the Lord. I don't think that's what it means when it says he was proclaiming the Lord. In the Hebrew mind, their name was tied to who they were. You know? Their name was tied to who they were. When you talked about somebody's name, you were talking about them. And so I don't think it was the Lord just saying Yahweh. I don't think he was just doing that. I think that there was something extra special that was already being experienced by Moses at this point when he was proclaiming his name. Verse 6, the Lord passed in front of him and proclaimed, the Lord is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in faithful love and truth, maintaining faithful love to 1,000 generations, forgiving iniquity, rebellion, and sin. So who's God talking about so far? Himself. Is this wrong? Everybody shake your head no. If God were to value anyone above himself, he would be committing idolatry. Right? The greatest thing in all of the universe is really outside of the universe, and it is God, and so God is exalting himself. I'm telling you, going back to Kim, I don't mind it when she focuses on herself and dolls herself up and stuff like that. I kind of like it, right? I benefit. She takes care of herself, I benefit. It's like this. God is saying, do you want to enjoy me? Then I'm going to exalt myself in your presence so that you will even much more so enjoy me. So that's what's going on. And God is describing his attributes. And we could dig into this, but we don't have time. We need to get to our prayer. The end of verse 7, but he will not leave the guilty unpunished, bringing the father's iniquity on the children and grandchildren to the 3rd and 4th generation. Now, let me just, because this, a lot of times, a big flag goes up or a red flare goes up. That's not fair. God's taking the iniquity and going to the 3rd and the 4th generation is not their fault, right? A lot of times what God does is like in Romans 1, he takes his hand off, he gives people over. He says, you want to sin? God gave them over. You want to sin further? God gave them over. A lot of times God's wrath is just demonstrated in the fact that he says, okay, I'm not going to protect you. I'll give you what you want. One of the things that we have observed, you see it, is if you have, for instance, an alcoholic. Someone is an alcoholic, and they raise their kids in that house. Their kids are messed up. And those messed up kids grow up, they get married, they're messed up parents, they kind of mess up their kids a little bit. And their kids kind of messed up. It usually takes, 3-4 generations to kind of weed out that big sin? That's what this is talking about. That's what this is talking about. God is simply allowing the consequences of sin to weed itself out, and sometimes it takes 3 to 4, maybe even longer. But that's what it means when it says, he will not leave the guilty unpunished, bringing the father's iniquity. As I understand this, bringing the consequences of the father's iniquity on the children and grandchildren to the 3rd and the 4th generation. There's a lot that we could say about God, that he has said about himself, but let's just finish up by going to verses 8 and 9. Moses immediately knelt low on the ground and worshiped. What does kneeling mean? We'll stop at verse 8. What does kneeling mean? What's it signify? Submit, right? We Americans don't like to kneel before other people, do we? We're rugged individualists. We don't like to kneel. Over in England, you go before, well, I don't know about royalty now, but back when Queen Elizabeth was here, people didn't mind kneeling down or, curtsying, the ladies before, and that would just be a posture of submission. Submission, right? Moses didn't do it because he had to. He did it because part of the joy of experiencing God is feeling small in God's presence and loving it. And we've talked about this before too. I mean, if you've ever, well, of course, you've gone to the ocean and seen the ocean is just vast and massive, or look up at the night sky and it's just massive, and you try to conceptualize how far away those stars are, and you just feel so small, and it feels so cool, right? You feel so small and it feels so good. God made us that way. And I believe that that's what's going on with Moses. He experienced God in an incredible way, and he had to just follow through with what was going on in his heart, kneel down in an attitude of smallness and submission, and just worship. Just worship. I'm telling you, a good old-fashioned revival could break out when enough people get tired of religion as usual and going through the motions and genuinely fall in love with God again, right? So let's go into our time of prayer. We're going to say goodbye to those that are online and encourage you to spend some time in prayer as those